1. Historical blueprint. Divide and rule as U.S. colonial precedent. The British Empire famously used divide and conquer in India and Africa to maintain control. The United States inherited and evolved this method, using it in Latin America, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia, Cold War Asia. The U.S. pitted China against the Soviet Union after Nixon's 1972 visit, and armed anti-communist regimes throughout Asia. The goal was not Asian unity but strategic fragmentation to prevent a bloc strong enough to challenge U.S. hegemony. 2. U.S. militarization of the Indo-Pacific region. Quad alliance. Presented as a security dialogue, it is widely seen as a containment strategy against China. Its military exercises encircle China, heightening regional tensions. AUKUS Pact. The 2021 nuclear submarine deal gave Australia new military capabilities aimed at countering China's maritime influence in the South China Sea and beyond. Philippine military bases. In 2023, the U.S. secured access to 4 new bases in the Philippines, under each strategically located near Taiwan and the South China Sea, further agitating China. Fact. In 2023, Chinese officials publicly accused the U.S. of using the Philippines as a pawn to stir up trouble in the region. 3. Taiwan as a flashpoint. Provoking Chinese overreaction. Nancy Pelosi's 2022 visit to Taiwan. Against China's explicit warnings, the U.S. sent the then House Speaker to Taiwan. China responded with massive military drills. But the provocation was seen globally as intentional bait. Weapon sales to Taiwan. The U.S. continues to arm Taiwan under the guise of defense, but many Asian analysts view this as a move to drag China into a military conflict. Fact. According to SI, U.S. arms sales to Taiwan increased by over 400% from 2018 to 2022. 4. Encouraging regional rivalries to weaken unity. Japan's military expansion. The U.S. has backed Japan's constitutional pushing it to develop counter-strike capabilities for the first time since World War II. This creates friction with China and Korea, whose collective memory of Japanese imperialism is unresolved. South Korea-Japan alliance. Washington has worked to normalize ties between historical enemies, Japan and South Korea, not for reconciliation, but for joint militarization against China. Fact. In 2023, President Biden held a trilateral summit with Japan and South Korea focused on standing up to China, despite both nations having deep historical grievances. 5. Fracturing Asian economic unity. The CHIPS Act and tech war. The U.S. has pressured Asian allies to sever semiconductor ties with China. This fractures Asia's economic cohesion and forces countries to choose sides. Freedom of navigation operations. The U.S. Navy's frequent passage through the South China Sea is framed as maintaining international waters, but it regularly antagonizes China and draws Southeast Asian nations into the conflict zone. Fact. In 2022 alone, the U.S. conducted 13 major naval operations in contested waters, escalating military tension with China. 6. The Pan-African view. Imperialism rebranded in the East. The U.S. effort to fracture Asia mirrors how colonial powers disrupted African unity, arming rival factions, redrawing borders, and embedding foreign bases. In Asia, the U.S. pursues a similar goal, not to protect democracy or freedom, but to prevent the emergence of a unified, independent Asia capable of countering Western economic and military supremacy. Spiritual parallel. The disruption of regional harmony by Western militarism mirrors how colonialism severed African peoples from their ancestral order. Philosophical alignment. Both Asia and Africa have historical cosmologies that prioritize balance, sovereignty, and mutual responsibility. The West imposes a worldview of dominance, competition, and manipulation. Conclusion: by escalating tensions in the Taiwan Strait, militarizing the Indo-Pacific, and rearming historical enemies, the US appears to be employing a dangerous geopolitical game, provoking China into conflict with its neighbors. The true aim is not regional stability, but the weakening of Asia's collective strength, economically, militarily, and culturally. This echoes the colonial playbook seen across the global South. Pan-African consciousness demands vigilance against all forms of neo-colonial manipulation, wherever they occur. Unity among formerly colonized nations. Africa, Latin America is not just strategic, it is sacred. The resistance against dividend rule must be global. Suggested references for further research: Noam Chomsky, Who Rules the World, Vijay Prashad, The Darker Nations, A People's History of the Third World, Alfred McCoy, In the Shadows of the American Century, South China Morning Post, and Al Jazeera. Coverage on Asia Tensions, SIPRI, Arms Transfer Database, ASEAN Analysis, Council on Foreign Relations, Reports on U.S. Influence,